Over the last few years, I've noticed all my favorite books have one critical thing in common. They all make me cry. It's unclear to me why I enjoy getting emotionally destroyed, but now felt like the perfect time to hunt for a new favorite by reading only sad books for a week. Hello friends, welcome back to my book channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different than what I normally do, and we have a little reading vlog today, but not just any reading vlog. I don't know why I do this to myself, but I decided that this week we are going to be reading sad books for a week. And I saw Sarah Caroli do this on her channel a few years ago now, and the idea has always really stuck with me. At the current moment, there are a few books that I understand to be very sad that are on my TBR, and I thought this video would be the perfect way to get them off my TBR and also feel something. And so the first book that we are going to be reading in this video is none other than The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. I have heard so many incredible things about this book, but I have also heard that this book is completely devastating. I know that it's about World War II. That is all that I know. I think there are sisters in here potentially, and I already know, like, I'm a huge crier in books, so I already know that this is going to destroy me. And if you guys watched my 15 books to read in 2025 video at the beginning of this year, reading a book by Kristin Hannah was on that list, and so this is something that I need to do by the end of the year. I think that's all I have for this introduction, so I will update you guys when I have more thoughts and opinions on The Nightingale. I've officially reached the 100-page mark, and so I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on how I'm feeling, some first impressions. But first things first, I want to tell you guys what this book is about in the off chance that you have not heard about this book or you haven't read this book, because I honestly didn't really know much about it besides the fact that it takes place during World War II and that it's sad. And basically in this book, it looks like we're following two sisters. They are our main characters. We have Vianne and Isabel, and the two of them are very different from each other. Vianne is married and she has a really young daughter named Sophie, and her husband at the very beginning of this book gets drafted to go fight for France against Germany. And then we also have Isabel, who is the younger sister. She's a very fiery personality. She can't last in a boarding school for longer than, like, I don't know, a few months or a year. Like, she keeps getting kicked out of school because she doesn't really like to follow the rules. She's very rambunctious. And one thing that I'm really liking about this book so far is it's being really well represented and communicated how nobody has any idea what's going on. I feel like it's really easy to learn about World War II now, knowing everything that we know, and look back and not realize how in the dark people really were. And so you have Vianne and Isabel really disagreeing on the state of things, the state of the political climate, where the war is going, and things like that. And we can see in one of our characters, there's a lot of denial, and in the other one of our characters, they have kind of accepted the reality but really want to fight what's going on. I also think that Kristin Hannah, I've never read any of her books before, and I really like her writing style. I feel like when you hear historical fiction and also pick up a book this thick, it can be kind of easy to be like, oh, I'm scared, I'm intimidated, I don't really want to read that. And I think I've definitely fallen into that trap over the years because, again, I've never picked up one of her books, but her writing is very easy to comprehend. And then the other thing is we're not spending too long in any one scene. Like, it's honestly moving very, very quickly. We met our sisters. We see how they're both in different parts of France. We kind of, I don't know, you get to see a lot very quickly. And so I'm not really ever feeling like I'm bored, which is also something that I think a lot of people might worry about when it comes to a historical fiction book. All of that to say, I'm having a really good time right now. I am nervous though. Like, I'm not at that point where I'm feeling super connected to the characters, but I can tell that it's coming. I think it's going to be a slow burn type of situation where probably halfway through the book, all of a sudden I'm going to care so much. And like, obviously things are going to get really bad really quickly. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention in this update is, as you guys saw last night, I was listening to the audiobook for part of this book. I so far have probably done half and half audiobook, half physical reading. I'm definitely the kind of person where an audiobook can ruin the experience of a book for me. I tend to strongly prefer physically reading a book, but at this point, the audiobook is actually adding a lot to the experience. And I'm probably going to still go back and forth a lot, but just if anyone's wondering or if you're nervous about starting this book, the audiobook is fantastic. And I feel like it's making me like the book more versus creating some separation and detachment, which can happen to me a lot. So that's my update on this. And then since we're here, I just really briefly wanted to show you guys the crochet project that I was working on last night. I'm crocheting my first pillow. I've done blankets and bookmarks and stuff like that, but I've never actually made a pillow before. And I made granny squares for the first time, which sounds ridiculous, but I've never actually made like individual granny squares before and sewed them together. And I feel like it turned out so cute. I think that's it. Tonight I'm actually headed to the movies to watch Regretting You with some friends. It's the new movie based off of Colleen Hoover's book. I probably won't have any time to read tonight, but once I reach around the halfway mark, I will update you guys more on my thoughts and opinions. But yeah, so far I'm really liking this. I'm just under halfway. It's the next day, and I wanted to give a little update on how I'm feeling, how I'm doing now that we've reached this point in the book. I can't really give anything else away at this point because spoilers, obviously, I don't want to say too much because this book truly is incredible. Like, I'm really, really enjoying it so far. A few things that I'm noticing at this point is I'm starting to feel a lot more invested in the characters and the plot. I think I said at the beginning, I wasn't fully feeling it quite yet, but I do feel that with books like this, it can take a little while to care a lot about the characters because I didn't really feel like I knew them yet. But now I feel like I kind of know who Vienne is as a person and the choices that she makes and what the motivation behind those choices is. And the same goes for Isabel. And I feel like also all the characters are now very distinct in my mind. That can kind of be the other thing, is I want to very clearly know who everybody is and why they make the choices that they do. And so I'm getting more invested, which is good, but also bad for the potential tears that I'm going to cry at the end of this book. Also, plot-wise, this is definitely picking up a lot. I think in the beginning it's not a slow book. Kristen Hanna's writing is not slow in any way, but in terms of what was actually happening, there weren't a ton of crazy things going on at the beginning, but now we are at a point where both of our characters have wound up on separate paths. They have different goals, different intentions, different feelings about the war, and each path that the characters have chosen, I feel like the implications of that decision are really starting to pick up. And it's really scary because, we know what we know about World War II. And so I'm just really scared, not only for our main characters, but also their friends, their families. It could go wrong in so many different ways. And I think that's what freaks me out the most. Yeah, those are kind of my thoughts and opinions. Not a ton has changed besides the fact that more is happening now. I'm a lot more invested and I'm afraid. That about sums it up. So I'm planning on doing a lot of reading this weekend. It is a Friday today and getting through as much of this book as I can. My book club is actually meeting on Wednesday, and this is our book club book. It really worked out for me this month because I wanted to film this video anyway. So yeah, I absolutely have to finish this by Wednesday, but I'm planning on making a ton of progress this weekend. The next clips will probably be me sad or crying, one of the two. So I will see you then, and then we'll pick our next book and it'll be fine. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine. I have like 40 pages left and I'm so afraid. I don't want to do this. As you guys saw, I finished this book yesterday and I needed a little bit of time to collect myself and collect my thoughts before I talked about my final review of The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. But safe to say, I loved this book so much, and I definitely had a feeling that I was going to. I have a reputation for loving books that make me cry and that make me feel things, and this book definitely ended up falling in that category. The Nightingale really felt like a story about courage. We have Vianne and Isabel, both two incredibly strong, beautiful characters who embodied courage, but the way that they did that looked incredibly different. Again, I'm not going to say how that is because spoilers, but they both just embodied this beautiful, beautiful character trait, and the way that they were able to show it was so different and in such a scary time too, to be able to do the things that they did. I loved it. Another thing too that I really appreciated about this story is in this book, we're watching World War II as it happens in France. And every World War II book that I have read up until this point were a lot more focused on either they took place in Germany or we were following protagonists who were Jewish themselves. And so I found it really interesting to take a different approach and a different perspective on that narrative that I'm used to when it comes to World War II. And I feel like I learned a lot. Like, in addition to the fact that this was a really beautiful and tragic story, I also just learned a lot about the war. And after I finished the book, there's a really, really short but powerful author's note at the end where Kristen Hanna talks about where she got the inspiration from this story and how so much of it is based on real things that happened, of course. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention that I just absolutely loved is the way that Kristen Hanna centers this story around women and looking at the heroes who might be overlooked. All of that together, this book was just so good, so special to me. I don't know if I want to rate it a 4.75 or a 5. It's definitely somewhere in there. I think I just need a little bit more time to sit on it. It also in some ways feels wrong to rate this book because of how true it is. Like, so much of this book actually did happen, and it feels almost wrong to rate experiences that are like based on nonfiction. So I feel kind of weird rating this book, but just know that I absolutely loved it. Book number 1 is done, which means it's time to pick our second and final book of this reading vlog to try to make myself feel things. Give me 1 second. There were a few directions that I could have gone for the second book in this video, but ultimately I have decided to read The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This video is reading sad books, obviously from the title, but I kind of wanted to start with the true heart-wrenching book. Like, I know that this book is sad through and through, but this book, I don't know a ton about it, but I know that the themes in here are very sad and the beginning of this book is very sad, but I don't think it actually ends sad. Like, I think it's supposed to be heartwarming by the end, but we're dealing with a lot of very intense topics. Definitely check trigger warnings for this book and The Nightingale too. Please, I beg you, check trigger warnings for any book I'm reading in this video. I don't actually know a lot about it, so I wanted to read the blurb real quick. The blurb says, "It's a beautiful day in Newport, Rhode Island when Phoebe Stone arrives at the Grand Cornwall Inn wearing a green dress and gold heels, not a bag in sight, alone. She's immediately mistaken by everyone in the lobby for one of the wedding people. But she's actually the only guest at the Cornwall who isn't here for the big event. Phoebe is here because she's dreamed of coming for years. She hoped to suck oysters and take sunset sails with her husband, only now she's here without him, at rock bottom, and determined to have one last decadent splurge on herself. Meanwhile, the bride has accounted for every detail and every possible disaster the weekend might yield, except for, well, Phoebe and Phoebe's plan, which makes it that much more surprising when the two women can't stop confiding in each other." So this one is definitely on the sadder side too, but I think I just need a book with a sweeter and more heartwarming ending while still covering and discussing darker and heavier topics, and I feel like this is the perfect book for that. So I'm gonna get reading, and I'll probably update you guys when I am around the 100-page mark. know I said that I would update you guys around the 100-page mark, but I did make it to, I want to say halfway or even over halfway. And honestly, it's because I've been really enjoying this book and I just didn't want to put it down and pick up my camera, but we're here and I'm going to fill you in. I do feel like now I have a better grasp of what the story is actually about. And so I did just want to talk about that very briefly, but I am going to be talking about the first like 25 to maybe 50 pages. I don't think any of this is spoilers, but if you want to know only what's on the blurb going in, skip to this timestamp. In the story, we're following our main character, Phoebe, and she booked a room at this really beautiful hotel in Newport, Rhode Island. And she booked this hotel for a very specific reason, that reason being to end her life. It's very sad. It's very dark. And when Phoebe gets to the hotel, she realizes that she's actually the only person staying there who's not in this big wedding that's happening at the hotel. And on that day, while she's there, Phoebe meets the bride named Lila, and they form a very unique friendship. And Phoebe tells Lila her plan, and Lila's like, no, you literally can't do that because it will ruin my wedding day. And we go from there. The first thing that I'm noticing about this book is we are dealing with incredibly dark, complex subject matter. And honestly, it really reminds me of Anxious People by Friedrich Bachmann. Let me grab it. Anxious People does something similarly where we're talking about really, really sad topics, but the tone in which Friedrich Bachmann writes is a lot more light and happy and digestible. And I feel like it makes these very difficult and dark topics more approachable. And so I loved how he did that in this book. And I'm also loving how Alison Esbach is doing it in this book. Very different writing styles, but I do feel like they're achieving something similar. Another thing that I'm really enjoying and appreciating about this book is we're watching Phoebe not only as she is staying at this hotel, observing all of these wedding guests, but also she throughout the book is going back and talking about her life and all of the moments in her life that have led her to this point and what is causing her to make this decision and to like go through with this plan. And I feel like as a reader, every time that Phoebe is telling us something that has happened in her past, it's her way of processing these things that I feel like she hadn't processed previously. Like everything that she's going through and detailing and telling us literally feels like mental work of her. Yeah, just like processing everything that she's been through and experienced. And I love that like stream of consciousness feel that this has because she's just like telling us what's happened and how it made her feel with like no filter, I would say. And I really like that about Phoebe's character. Also, the bride, Lila, ends up being a very complex character because at the beginning we meet her when she's like, please, Phoebe, I beg you, do not carry out your plan because it's going to ruin my wedding day, which is a really shallow way to approach what Phoebe is trying to do. But as we get to know her better and as Phoebe gets to know her better, we realize that she's actually a lot more complicated than she initially sounds like. And I love layered, complex characters where the further back you peel that onion, the more you learn about them. Like I just love that. And then the last thing that I wanted to just mention in this update, I feel like I have so many thoughts about this book and it's because I really like the way that it's written, is we start out with Phoebe when her character really feels like an omniscient narrator because Phoebe goes to this wedding and she's really just an observer. Nobody knows who she is or why she's there. And so she's just watching all of these wedding people and kind of makes up like names for them and backstories for them and makes a lot of assumptions about these people as a viewer, kind of again, like this omniscient narrator that she's telling us everything that she's seeing. But we reach a point where that changes and Phoebe becomes an actor in this story that she's been viewing and analyzing. And Phoebe has this moment, again, no spoilers. This is all very vague, very broad, that Phoebe has this moment where she realizes that she's kind of slipped from being an observer to a very active participant. And she's like, oh my God, they can see me. They know that I exist. Like that kind of moment, almost like what I would imagine meeting a celebrity that you like, or like an influencer or something like that, being like, whoa, now they know that I exist. And I don't know how that's making me feel. And that transition and just that awareness that Phoebe had as a character, I ate that up. I feel like I'm saying a lot about this book, but I'm really enjoying it. And I feel like the writing is so digestible, but also there's so much more being said than what's on the page. And I love that. I have talked far too long for this update, but I'm going to get back to reading and then I'm going to give you guys my final updates and thoughts and reviews and ratings for everything. And we'll see if I come out in one piece after reading sad books. I've officially finished The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. I literally finished this book about an hour ago, and I want to talk about it and give you guys my final review, not only for this book, but also for The Nightingale, and just do the end of video wrap up and review and all of that good stuff. But of course, we need to talk about The Wedding People. Guys, this book was so good, so much better than I was expecting this book to be. I feel like when you hear people talk about the synopsis of this, it's not, at least for me, it wasn't the kind of synopsis that really grabbed me, that immediately I heard it and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to read that book. But when you actually take the time to sit down, connect with the story, connect with the characters, you can't help but really appreciate it and enjoy it. I really liked the ending that all of our characters got in this book. I feel like that's one thing you don't always see in fiction stories like this. It didn't necessarily wrap up with a beautiful little bow, but with that said, I still really, really liked the way that everything did tie up in the end. And then a couple other things that I wanted to just touch on that I hadn't touched on in this book so far is there were so many references to classic literature in this book, some of which I did definitely understand and grasp because I had read the books that Alison Esbach was alluding to. However, there were several others that I have never read before, and I feel like this book would have just resonated even that much more if I had read those books. For instance, I haven't read anything by Virginia Woolf or Charlotte Bronte, and those were pretty prominent classic literature references that we had in this book. But there were also others, like quite a few others that, again, I did fully grasp and understand, and I really appreciated those moments when there was a call out to something that I knew. But at the same time, when there was a reference to books that I hadn't read, I was like, oh, dang it, like I'm missing out on something right now, and I knew that I was. And then the last thing that I did just want to mention is at the end of this book, some very interesting, complicated, complex character dynamics emerge, and I really, really liked that. At the beginning, everything just kind of feels like you're taking it in at face value. Who Phoebe's meeting, the perception that she has of everybody, what she thinks of the wedding party, all of that kind of stuff. But the better that Phoebe gets to know each character, the better we get to know each character, and just very, very unique and, again, complex character dynamics come up. And I love that when everyone has like an interesting relationship to each other and you don't know what choice they're going to make and how it's going to affect that other character. I really appreciated that. And so all of that to say, my final review and rating for this book is, I think, a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. I just wish that there were more moments that when I wasn't reading this book, I was wishing that I was. If I wasn't reading this book, I wasn't having those thoughts of, oh man, like I really want to go pick up my book and read right now. Every time I was reading, I was enjoying, but it wasn't fully captivating my mind. And also I didn't cry. I came close. There were definitely some very, very sad moments, but it's dealt with in a lot lighter and happier way than I've seen maybe these topics handled in other books. Overall, excellent. I would absolutely recommend this book. And then of course, I did need some time to sit on The Nightingale and think about what rating I wanted to give this book. And ultimately, I have decided on a 5-star. I just feel like anything below a 5-star does not do this book justice. Like it was an absolute masterpiece. I loved it so, so much. And I think the thing that really pushed it over the edge for me is, I think I mentioned earlier in this video, this was also a book I was reading with my book club. It worked out so well. I had just bought this book 2 days prior, and then my book club voted to read it this month, and that was just fantastic. So I wanted to read this book anyway, but when I got together with the girls in my book club to talk about it and analyze it and just reflect on how this book made us feel, it really made me see different perspectives, and I appreciated things about this book that I didn't maybe pick up on the first time, or not the first time that I was reading it, but when I was just in my own head and my own thoughts. And so ultimately I am landing on a 5, which means that this video of reading sad books for a week ultimately ended so well because I cried once. Actually, I cried a few times while reading The Nightingale, but I cried for one book, and we came out of it with a 4-star read and a new new 5-star read, and I will absolutely be recommending these books in future book recommendations videos. These were fantastic. If you guys made it all the way to the end of this video, comment down below the wedding ring or like engagement ring for this book so I know who made it all the way here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you guys don't miss a future upload. And I think that's it from me. I hope you guys are having the best day and the best reading month, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!